Day 3, Deal Island to Roydon Island. We woke to the alarm, stuffed food down our throats, had a coffee, then started lugging all our gear down the hill to the boat. It takes a couple of trips to get everything down there. Our plan was to leave Deal and head across to Roydon Island, which is just off the northwest tip of Flinders Island. We had 65 k's planned that day. There was a light tailwind predicted till around 2 p.m, then a strong easterly change coming through. We wanted to get there before that happened. It's not much fun finishing with a big day and a strong headwind. Our bearing was 131 degrees for the day to keep us off the tip of Flinders. We only had a few degrees of correction for course over ground as it was almost directly tailwind and the tide shouldn't have too much impact through the start of the day. It took us 10 to 15 minutes at least to stuff everything into the boat each day. At the start it took us longer. With 2 people in a double kayak, there's an awful lot of gear, not much spots to put it in.
I must say, I'm not looking forward to
After we got used to it, we could get it down to about 15 minutes. It was sad leaving Deal Island without having had time to explore. We also missed saying goodbye to the caretakers, whose generosity was greatly appreciated and made our evening much more comfortable and relaxing than it would have been. Deal Island, Erith and Dover are spectacular. It would be great to spend at least a day, if not 2 or 3, exploring each. There's lots of hikes to do, lots of remote little bays you could paddle to or walk to, and if you're into mountain climbing, there's lots of mountains you could climb as well. You can spend a few hours in the museum quite easily as well. It's a fantastic little thing to go and have a look at.
Deal Island, East Cove. It's about leave on day 3, second big one. Paddling to Roydon, it's the last of our big days. Looking forward to it. It's going to be a hard day. Hopefully we'll be there by 3. What do you reckon, Jared?
Sure.
Had assistance by Ryan Pos for Sailing Adventures. He's given us weather reports each day and looks favourable. Headwind for a couple of hours. Not too strong, then we should have a bit of a tailwind for the rest of the day. Check in later.
By the time we were packed, the sun was up. We headed off knowing that we would have some crosswind for a couple of hours, then a tailwind for most of the day. We headed off to beat the tide coming into Flinders and get ahead of the easterly change that was coming. We had a little tidal assist coming out of Murray Pass. It looked a little choppy and windy, but it wasn't too bad. Water around the islands is once again crystal clear. There had been a sailboat moored off the beach at East Cove. We didn't actually see the people that were on it, but they were apparently climbing around the mountain. There's a few little boats and things that we saw around Deal Island, and they could be in 20 metres of water. You could still see the bottom. It's quite amazing. The rocky formations on the headlands and around the island are spectacular. There's a range of different colours and a myriad of different rock formations. As we were passing along the southern side of Deal Island, there was a whole bunch of bubbles coming up. Not sure what they were from. It was pretty interesting. It really was a pretty good day. Leaving Flinders, the views are again cliched perfect. We had some initial headwind and shock, and it was smooth sailing. As we left the island looking back on Deal, the cliffs were amazing. It's a fantastic view. At this point, we couldn't see either Roydon Island or Flinders at all. We were expecting to see Flinders from a long way out, but in the end we couldn't see it till we're 10 or 15 k's away. Our speed was around 8 kilometres an hour or higher. Along this section of the trip, to the north, you can see Right Rock, about 20 kilometres out of Deal, then Kayak Island, another 20 kilometres along. You can't land on them, they're just rocky outcrops, but it feels like you have a friend off in the distance. We were travelling quite well. We saw albatross again, and then hundreds of seabirds fishing 30 k's off land. We decided to steer clear. If they're feeding from above, they're also probably feeding from below. It was another surreal day. We couldn't see Flinders, as I said, until we're 10 or 15 k's out. There was a sea mist, and we did have thoughts several times of
how was
what
that?
If our bearing was incorrect. What if we'd made a mistake? We're just heading out in the middle of the ocean.
Nice
Pos told
slow
us to stay off the
ride
island for our
into
approach and
Flinders
only
and
duck in
Roydon.
with a few hundred metres to go. We hit some eddies and turbulence for around 45 minutes, which was quite unpleasant and certainly made us work hard. Then we got into the channel between Flinders and Roydon, and my God, is it beautiful. The water is crystal clear. There's birds. Apparently sometimes there'll be seals in this section. We didn't see any, but the water was just amazing. You could see the bottom the whole way through. The interesting thing about doing trips like this, when it is really rough, when it is really wild, you don't think about turning your camera on. So all these messy bits where we get eddies and currents, we generally didn't think about turning the GoPro on. I think this is our landing here, dude.
Hey,
I think this is our landing here.
I'm pretty sure it's just around the other side of that. Remember, this was the first one I had, and then you said, no, the hut's at the other end. Oh no, you might be right. Just that it's just on the other side of here, there's another little beach just up here.
There was some confusion in regards to our landing spot.
On the other side of these rocks?
See the hut.
It's not around those ones.
Turned out the GPS was right.
Well, it's at the right at the end of this beach, maybe.
Just at the end of this. It's 150 metres away. And that's not on the, that's up in the hut.
Oh, righto. Yeah, well, maybe it's here then.
This is it.
One of the problems with sitting for 10 hours in one position in a kayak, you don't get to move.
Yeah.
Back and the knees take a lot of load. So when we arrived at Roydon, we could barely stand up.
How you feel?
I'll leave that comment to later.
No comment. Very sore, very tired, but it is a beautiful view.
Roydon Island.
One of the challenges people don't think about is calf cramping from steering the boat. Due to the swell tides and winds and the sail, course corrections are almost constant.
Mirage kayak that did the job for us. And that's Jared that whinged all day.
We'd now done
This is Roydon
180
Island.
kilometres in 3 days. My legs were really feeling it.
Another big day today, 63 k's. There's Jared down there with a kayak. Started the day, it was reasonable with a tailwind, but the last 2 hours was awful with going into a current and essentially lots of eddies and rough water. That's Flinders over the way. The water's beautiful, so are the rocks. It's just amazing scenery.
The hut was a great little pad. I swept it out to get the sand out. We set up and cooked dinner. We lazed around for the afternoon, and then the penguins started to arrive after dark. They start squawking and carrying on. This goes on till around 9 p.m, then they start again around 4 a.m. They leave before dawn, and then it settles down. Not great sleep with them during that time, though.
Hey, little fella.